The Brown Helmets have made their debut. Obviously, part of the Cleveland Browns attire for this week's game, hosting the Green Bay Packers. Was Dawand Jones benched, or was he not benched? Joe Flacco, how long is the leash, and how long should the leash be? And injury reports from today's Green Bay Packers and Cleveland Browns practices. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate all the support here for the OBR, whether it's the written content over at the OBR.com, your favorite Cleveland Browns coverage from our fantastic group of writers. Always, you need to look into the VIP access, the insider forums, the Ask the Insiders, and of course, your small monetary submission gets bundled with a subscription to Paramount Plus. If you like UFC and you like the Cleveland Browns, the OBR is the perfect gift for yourself. Thank you all for the continued support here at the OBR streaming network. You will have the Inside the Beat with Fred Greetham and, of course, Mike Keefe following. And if you're still around after that, Crack the Beers, Garage Beers with Mike Keefe as well. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch. I guess we'll start with the injury report before we get into some of the other stuff, right? For the Cleveland Browns, Joel Bitonio did not practice today. Originally, basically it made it sound like rest. Now they're saying it's a little bit of a back injury. Corey Baraka was limited with his ankle injury today. I don't think we have any concern about Corey. Just get him off the ankle as much as he can and let him gut it through, of course, on Sunday. Denzel Ward returned to practice full capacity after the dehydration issues Sunday in Baltimore. Mike Hall, Grant Delpit, Jack Conklin, and Malik Collins, all a limited stature. And then, of course, the one you're really going to kind of be concerned with at this point is DeAndre Carter. Of course, suffered the concussion on the opening kickoff return Sunday in Baltimore. If we get to about Friday, you probably have to think highly that DeAndre Carter will not be a player Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. We saw Isaiah Bond return punts on Sunday. It did not go very well. We know Jerome Ford can handle kickoff duties, but let's not forget that Gage Lavardane, who was a very solid punt returner for the Cleveland Browns in the preseason, is now on the practice squad. It would seem like a logical call up from the practice squad to the 53 to take Carter's spot if he is unable to go on Sunday. One DNP for the Green Bay Packers, Jerron Reed, who has actually had some ankle surgery and surgery on his clavicle. They had mentioned when the injury happened, he was playing hurt with a foot or an ankle. Both issues have been surgically repaired as the Packers wait for their big play wideout to come back. Jordan Love, left thumb injury, full practice for him. Nothing really as of note of concern for the Packers headed towards Sunday to this point. Interestingly enough, today, the way it was told to all of us is that, Dawand Jones was suffering Sunday in Baltimore, with, some heat symptoms and dealing with, difficulties with dealing with the heat, which seemed like a perfectly understandable rationale. Denzel Ward missed a lot of time, was trying to get IVs, trying to get back in there, just could not get himself right. So for Dawand Jones, it certainly seemed, that it was very palatable and it was certainly something that was easy to swallow, that Dawand, just a giant mountain of a man, was dealing with, some heat adversity as well. And that explains some of the reasons he was not on the field. Well, Dawand Jones says differently. Dawand Jones says that he was taken out of the game. Now, I don't know if, and I know how this is going to go probably for some media. Now, I give kudos to Dawand Jones. if Dawand Jones is saying I was pulled out because I wasn't playing up to the level I needed to be playing, then good, man. I mean, a cell phone, calling yourself out, God bless you. It's impressive for a young player to do. Um, I'm sure, Coach Stefanski, probably in trying to protect his player. And again, if this is the case of, the story has now changed, you try to stick up for your player. There's also ways he didn't have to say, Dewan was dealing with heat and could have said, look, we want to see Levinson get some reps. Um, Levinson obviously did play. I think the question is if Levinson had gone in and played well, would we have gotten Dawand Jones back on the field? Um, Obviously, we'll never know. Levinson committed a penalty. The next thing you know, Dawand Jones was back in there, and then Dawand Jones finished out the game at his position at left tackle, of course. Again, I understand it from the Kevin Stefanski take of, you're trying to defend a player. If that is, in fact, the case that he was taken off the field because they wanted to get Levinson a little run because they weren't thrilled with what Dawand Jones was doing, then of course, you try to protect your player. That is what good coaching does. You don't necessarily have to do it, of course, at the NFL level. Just say, hey, man, didn't like what we were saying, made a change. It's good enough. I mean, it's the pros, you're getting paid. We understand how all that works. So certainly a little bit of, communication. I don't know if it's a communication issue, where, if Kevin Stefanski was going to say that, maybe Dawand Jones needed to know that was Kevin Stefanski's plan to say what he did and word it like he did. But again, if Dawand Jones feels that he was benched because he wasn't playing up to par, then, again, that's really impressive because, we talk all the time about, being relied upon. And, we talk about, what is required and, putting in the work. And not saying that Dewan isn't putting in the work, obviously, but the work also has to work, has to work into results on field performance. So maybe Dewan himself feels that he was not playing well enough and, came right out and said it. Will this probably get gas lit and, probably have a, little lighter fluid thrown on it by, certainly media members who you just guzzle up this type of stuff. Certainly could happen, and certainly in some capacity probably will happen. I think it's kind of hard not to realize that, Joe Flacco being the number one quarterback for this team, looking at where Joe is currently on the field, that maybe this just, is something that's not gonna net many results. And it's not a knock on Joe, and God bless you if you can still go out there and do it. You know, he just the athleticism and the lack thereof, and Joe was never a wow athlete, so that's good athlete, yes, wasn't the wow athlete where defensive coordinators were oh my God, how the world are we going to stop Joe Flacco's legs from beating us? Never was that the case ever with Joe Flacco. And, if the Browns offensive line was performing like a top unit, which it's just not going to be the case, maybe they don't look that old because their quarterback is old, but, this offensive line looks old to this point. I'm not sure if it's going to change. And if it does change, how quickly it can possibly change. So the question would then be, and I think everyone kind of just said, oh, well, this first 6-game stretch, it's really difficult. It's really tough. You don't want to necessarily put a rookie into it. And I can understand that. I absolutely can. But you have to start considering and wondering if Dylan Gabriel could possibly do a better job than Joe is to this point. Polar opposites as far as, when you were looking at these two quarterbacks, Joe big, tall, rocket armed guy. Dylan smaller, younger, more mind savvy, and not to diss his talents, but it's probably, more mind savvy than he is just an overall, you know, physical, talented player playing the position. But what we know of Dylan Gabriel and what we learned over the summer is that, one of the things the Browns absolutely were enamored with Dylan Gabriel was his processing ability and just how quickly the ball got into his hands and how quickly he could identify an open target and just get rid of the ball. Now, there's more things you can probably do with Dylan playing the position than Joe. You know, even if you just want to throw some, simple smoke screens, it takes time for the ball to get to the 6'6" quarterback, for him to flip his hips, fire it out. He throws more like an outfielder, throws more like a pitcher does. Dylan Gabriel throws more like a middle infielder, turning a double play. Ball gets in his hand, ball gets out. The pace of some of these things, and you can run some of these quick hitter type of things, smoke screens, etc. with Dylan Gabriel that you probably just cannot run them with much success with Joe Flacco just due to his size. It's it's fact. Now, Joe, some of the issues, and I know this was the first, I believe it was the first sack Trey Hendrickson had in week 1. Joe's mobility is certainly hampering him a little bit. And he tried to step up away from the sack, and it almost kind of just felt like, he kind of got his feet caught up with each other and just, and Joe just wasn't able to get out of that. A younger quarterback with more and better mobility should be able to step up into that pocket and get away from that sack. Gabriel is not a world-class athlete playing the quarterback position, but in terms of where Joe's mobility is right now, I would say that Dylan Gabriel's athleticism is probably world class compared to what Joe has left. Even when Joe's breaking the pocket, there's not much success that comes from it. It either gets thrown away or you get a absolutely heinous interception like you got last week. So is it fair to start questioning and wondering when, when is enough of Joe Flacco? You know, playing Dylan Gabriel and starting Dylan Gabriel against the Green Bay Packers, the way their defense has been performing to this point is, in my opinion, yes, it's utter insanity to put the young man through that. There's no question. But if you're not going to be able to win, if you're not going to be able to do much offensively, and look, some of this is certainly spread out, not just the quarterback. So please don't think I'm just doing that. But if this is all, if it's just a stall and the offense really isn't getting anything going whatsoever, then you go back to basically what the premise was of playing Joe from the beginning. And the premise of starting Joe Flacco as QB1 was that he gave you the best chance to win. Week 1, you should have won. Week 2, oof, you didn't get enough. And again, it's not just Joe. Separation was not really being had by the wide receivers. I was not a overall fan of, going back and looking at this, of, you know, some of, the patterns and how they were, paired together and how they just did not seem to have much of an answer whatsoever for the Cincinnati Bengals playing simple coverage, for the Baltimore Ravens playing simple, deeper zone coverage, keeping everything in front of you. And it just didn't go well. Again, Joe's not the guy that's just going to sit back there, get the ball quick, grip it, rip it, find the open guy. It's just not the nature of his big frame and what he does or does not do best. Now, Gabriel can get you to play probably on time, a little more speed to it, a little more quickness to it, a little more pace to it. So, I mean, I'm not ready to pull the plug 100% on Joe Flacco being this team's starting quarterback. But if the premise of playing Joe and starting Joe was that he gave you the best opportunity to win, that's where I'm going to have a little bit of a problem with it. A, because you're not winning. B, because it's not necessarily just about winning. It's about getting this offense to function. Jerry Jeudy will still be here next year. Judkins, Sampson will still be here next year. Harold Fannin will still be here next year. Most likely Cedric Tillman will still be here next year. Isaiah Bond will be here next year. Jamari Thrash will be here next year. So if this team is not functioning much at all with Joe Flacco as the quarterback, then the question, of course, is why is Joe Flacco the quarterback? Because if you're not, flirting with the possibility of winning the game, then it feels an awful lot like we're just kind of spinning our tires in the mud here and just really wasting everyone's time with our eyes towards the 2026 season. If Joe can't flirt with winning, then you're probably doing a huge disservice by not playing Dylan Gabriel or even still getting Shedeur Sanders some reps. So I know everyone felt, week 7 after the first grueling 6 weeks, and I can get it. I can. I understand it. I can get it. But that does not mean that you can't alter the plan, because the plan and what it was based on is not reaping any rewards whatsoever. So if you can go to a Dylan Gabriel and you play at a little bit faster speed, have Dylan play on time, have Dylan, perform some of the college quick type stuff that can at least just get you some positive yards, or even Dylan's legs on a 1st and 10 and nothing there, and Dylan gets you to 2nd and 7. It's certainly better than 2nd and 10, obviously. And regardless, this year should be about getting some development for Dylan Gabriel, getting some development for Shedeur Sanders. No, neither one of them is going to challenge or halt the Browns from selecting a quarterback next April. Nothing these guys do this year will change that. And to be honest, with 2 first-round picks, it should not change that. Now, the Browns will be facing, of course, Green Bay Packers Sunday at 1 o'clock. And, of course, the Green Bay Packers, I don't think there's anywhere you can't start for this team right now, which was going to be a good football team. It certainly was going to be a good football team. But then on August 27th, I'm sorry, August 27th. Yeah, August 27th. The NFL world just stopped as the news broke that the Dallas Cowboys had traded Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. 2 first-round picks, defensive tackle Kenny Clark, who was not going to be part of the Green Bay Packers, most likely in 2026 anyway. And now a player who you certainly can put on the level of Myles Garrett was now put on this Green Bay Packers roster. And all of a sudden, the Packers went from a contender in the NFC to certainly a probable favorite to play within the NFC Championship game. And you can already see, even though just there an extremely limited amount of time, the absolute, just adrenaline shot getting a player like Micah Parsons has done to this Green Bay Packers defense overall. And what do we know, from covering and from me and obviously you folks watching the Cleveland Browns for so long and what Miles Garrett does, it just makes everyone's job just that much more easier on the defense as a whole. And now the Packers were a team that just, they've tried and they've tried to address pass rushers, and it just hasn't worked out for them. And, certainly had some high investments into it. But now, with adding a player like Parsons to this fold, everybody just looks a little better and everybody is performing a little better. I mean, there was a rep last week on Thursday Night Football where literally Washington had to triple team tight end, lineman, running back, Micah Parsons. Just kind of the juice that a guy like this brings. Now, this defense right now is playing better than the Cincinnati Bengals defense. It's certainly playing better right now than the Baltimore Ravens defense. So for the Browns to be facing this unit on Sunday, it's probably in some ways got to scare the living daylights out of you. Absolutely 100%. It is a really, really good unit. And, have great safety play. Cornerbacks are feisty. I'm not going to say they're great because they're not, but they're good. They're feisty. But also, they have the advantage of not having to worry about covering for so long because either Micah Parsons is going to get home or Micah Parsons is going to create an opportunity for one of his running mates to get home. It's a test for the Browns. It is a major test for the Browns. By far the best defense they will have faced yet this season. Edgerrin Cooper, their linebacker for Green Bay, is a fantastic player as well. This is a really good team. And it was a pretty good defense that became great to possibly elite with the addition of Micah Parsons. Still can't get over what Jerry did. I still cannot get over what Jerry Jones did. So now, do you try to run the ball? And do you try to run the ball maybe more than you have been in the first 2 weeks? It's certainly a possibility. You have Quinshawn Judkins now, and his debut in week 2 went pretty good. I certainly had my reservations about whether or not you should even put Judkins out there. They proved to me, obviously, that they knew what they were doing and made the correct call. And, now Judkins certainly got his feet wet, got his first NFL game out of the way, first NFL road game out of the way, first AFC North game out of the way against the Baltimore Ravens team. Now you get to, show him off, so to speak, to the home fans. And, and you're not going to rely on your rookie running back, to carry the offense. He's not Nick Chubb. Let's just slow down with that. Hopefully, we can have those conversations one day. But we're certainly not having those conversations now. And, Judkins, is it something where, 15 to 20 carries? Certainly game circumstances will, let us know on that. If the Browns can make it a game and, keep, keep in it. Because, that would certainly aid in for them to be able to slow the ball down, slow the game down. And obviously, if Judkins can find a way to run at, north of, 4 yards, hopefully more in the 4.5 or higher yard per carry total, certainly makes for a much more manageable offense on a whole. Should get you to, easier passing situations, easier third down situations, you know, for whichever quarterback is out there, it'll be Joe. And, see the way game goes if they don't, try to throw Dylan in there late and just, keep the, learning on the fly, maybe, so to speak. Green Bay's going to be a little bit more aggressive than Baltimore was or that Cincinnati was. That's just their nature. That's just the way they do things. They're going to, mix things up. I doubt they're just going to sit in shell coverage and deep cover 2 and cover 3 the way, Baltimore and Cincinnati were doing to them. And, if you get the situations to where it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, it's a little more manageable for Joe, certainly. And, and you're gonna have to and we still haven't you gotta take some shots. I feel kinda like a broken record at times, and, for those who know me and have listened to me for an extended period of time, that is the one thing where I seem to get my issues with a Coach Stefanski ran offense. There's just times where it feels like it's arena ball, and, you know what I'm saying? And the field's just not as big as it actually is, that have to challenge vertically. If you're never going to challenge vertically, there is no reason for anybody to have any respect for it whatsoever. If you're not gonna do it, there's no reason anybody should be scared of it, and that's something it's gotta change. And for me, I think that's one of the reasons that probably aggravates me a little bit the way it does with Joe, is because that's one of the things Joe does well. It's one of the better things Joe does, is throw the deep ball. So, and again, it gets back to this whole plan about, well, playing Joe gives us the best opportunity to win. Okay, but Joe Flacco trying to go 28 of 31 with, death of a thousand paper cuts type accuracy and short passing game, it doesn't give you the best team, but it does give you the best opportunity to win. If Joe Flacco, you think gives you the best opportunity to win, then you let Joe Flacco do some of the things that Joe Flacco is best at. And short to mid accuracy has never really been one of them. And that's not the style to be playing for a tall, lanky, 6'6" quarterback who's 40 years old. Everyone has their system. Everyone has their system. But the system has to be adapted to personnel. And if the personnel is really, really special, you can adapt the system overall. Heck, you tried to do it for Deshaun Watson. Didn't get you anywhere, but you tried to do it. So if Joe Flacco gives you the best opportunity to win, then you need to play call, scheme, design to give him the best opportunity for you to win. This isn't hard. And I understand, Fannin can be a great player in, what he's been doing to this point. That's fine. Fannin would be even better, though, if you could hit a vertical shot every now and then. And I'm talking 40, 50 yards. Can I see a 20 to 25-yard skinny post get hit? Something? Playing station to station football is a really, really difficult way to win, especially with the amount of points that are scored in today's NFL. And at times, Coach Stefanski's offense, when the running game is not at its best, looks like a team that is playing station to station football. And it just is not going to work with consistency at the NFL level, because you're asking for, flawlessness from the offensive line, which is unrealistic in 2025 in the NFL. Browns, Packers, Sunday, 1:00. Got a couple more shows here this week. We'll obviously continue to bring you this coverage. Mike Keith, Fred Greetham, Inside the Beat tonight. Make sure you check that out. And then, of course, Garage Beers, Mike Keith pulling double duty here. We appreciate you all here for the support at the OBR, the written content over at theobr.com, your favorite Cleveland Browns content from our awesome group of writers. And of course, the OBR streaming network, nightly beginning at 6 p.m. with Browns 3D, hosted by myself. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR over on Twitch as well. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. And we'll talk to you all tomorrow.